The purpose of Wealth Talk is to educate, inform, and hopefully entertain you on the subject of building your wealth. Wealth Builders recommends you should always take independent financial, tax, or legal advice before making any decisions around your finances.
Today's episode is brought to you by Wealth Builders Membership, a proven step-by-step process that helps you achieve financial security within 2 to 3 years. To find out more, head to wealthbuilders.co.uk/membership. Welcome to this week's episode of Wealth Talk. My name is Christian Rodwell, the Membership Director for Wealth Builders, joined today by our founder, Mr. Kevin Whelan. Hi, Kevin.
Hi, Chris. Good to be with you again. And we're going to get close up and personal today.
Yes, connection is running through today's episode and connection through WhatsApp, which I reckon most people listening have probably got this app downloaded into their phone, Kevin. It's something that we use every day.
You know, I was laughing a few minutes ago because I knew we were talking about WhatsApp today, and I just checked into my family's WhatsApp. We've got a WhatsApp group in family, and who hasn't these days? And you can create WhatsApp groups in workplaces, in families and businesses and networks of all kinds. And my wife put in the WhatsApp group, look how brave I was. I just let my grandson hold a snake. He was at a reptile house today, and he's holding a snake, and she's like, you know, so the immediacy, the fun, the authenticity of WhatsApp, it's friendly. It's, you know, just such a great tool. But I think most business owners and property business owners seeking joint ventures, for example, possibly are underplaying the use of WhatsApp because it's got much richer opportunity to create value than just simply being a source of connection that families make or people make.
That's right. Yeah. Today we're really focusing on how you can integrate WhatsApp into really more an intentional tool to connect with people, to do business with people, to support clients and customers, to help people through the process, right from the initial lead stage through to prospect, through to client. And we've got a fantastic guest today, Paul Green, who's a real expert speaking on stages. And that's how you first came across one another, I believe, Kevin.
Yeah, so Paul has been doing some work with something called the Expert Empires, which is a great organization hosted and run by Nick James. And Paul, I think, was just recently on stage talking about the value of this. And he brings an incredible freshness and a relaxed style to it. But despite all of that, it's very purposeful. So I think when you go to these sorts of events, as I do frequently, it's like going to meetings with intention. So Paul advocates using WhatsApp with intention. I think when you recognize that sometimes the best relationships come out of the serendipity of going to something, not knowing who you're going to meet, not knowing, you know, we talk about the ROI, Chris, don't we? One relationship, which is the R, an opportunity, which is the O, an idea, which is the I. And you and I seek it everywhere. You know, who is that right relationship? Who's got that right opportunity, or what is that right opportunity thrown at us by the world as it conspires to move? And what is that idea that we can latch onto today that will dramatically turn our wealth around? So we have to be proactive with our wealth. And I think Paul's advocating intentional proactivity with one of the best tools that you can use as we're discovering. And actually, Paul is going to be helping us to help me actually become building a more engaging process, let's say, into the way that I generally deliver my presentations on stages in different parts of the country and the world. So I'm looking forward to working with him. So why don't we head on over and listen to what he's got to say?
Sure. Yeah, Paul's got a great story. He gives great value. And in fact, there's a great freebie that accompanies today's episode. So click on the show notes after you've listened to this episode, download that freebie. It really is fantastic, and it will help you understand everything that our guest Paul Green is about to share. So let's head on to our conversation today with Paul Green. Paul, welcome to Wealth Talk today. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks so much for having me. It's really exciting to be here.
Yeah, kind of different topic today, and something that we're seeing a lot of now, which is the use of WhatsApp in business. How did you come across this?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I set my business up in 2020, and I was just finding that we weren't reaching people in the way I really wanted to reach people. We were trying to email people. We were trying to pick up the phone and speak to people. And I very quickly realized, how do I talk to people in my life? How do I communicate with friends and family? I talk to people on WhatsApp. That's where everybody hangs out. So it just felt like an absolute no-brainer, really. Why not use WhatsApp if that's where everybody is hanging out?
Yeah. And, it's just such a quick, fast and, relatively inexpensive way to have conversations, isn't it? When you think about the different marketing strategies that are out there, this is one of the best at the moment.
It really is. Yeah. I mean, our WhatsApp campaigns are currently getting around 95% open rate. So if you compare that to anything else, average email open rate's 22%. Average phone answer rate is anywhere between 11 and 30%. It just works. And it's funny. Clients always come to me and say, why WhatsApp? Why is WhatsApp the platform you're using? And that's always my response. I'm like, it just works. You just got to trust me that it works. It's where everybody hangs out. It's where everybody builds their relationships. It's the easiest way to reach people.
So who really is our conversation today focused at? Who's your main kind of avatar that you work with, Paul?
Yeah, great question. So for me, it's business owners who are looking to scale their business, but in a really authentic way. So they're looking to have more conversations, better quality conversations, without having to spend a load of money on employing sales teams or putting into ads to get in front of the right people.
And you've built a 6-figure consultancy now around conversations, not funnels. So it didn't always start that way. You haven't always been a sales strategist, have you?
No. So I'm actually a commercial airline pilot. That's the background. I've been flying for 10 years, but then unfortunately lost my job in 2020 during the COVID pandemic. So I used to fly for Flybe. They entered administration. So I decided very quickly to kind of pivot, as was the thing we all did in 2020, and find something new that I could do. And initially I set up a consultancy built around resilience training. My philosophy being, my training in the commercial cockpit is, if you're in an emergency situation at 38,000 feet, you can't pull out the yoga mat and start meditating, which is what people tell us to do when we're really stressed. You've got to have ways of dealing with these situations. So when we were in the middle of the pandemic, I thought there's a real crossover here between what I've learned in the commercial cockpit and what a lot of other people are suffering with. So I decided to set up a business at the time called the Cockpit Method, to teach these strategies. And my first kind of target really in terms of where I wanted to go and who I wanted to pick out was the NHS. We all think there's money and opportunities in the NHS. So it seemed like a really good opportunity and a really good place to start off. And it actually wasn't. I was sending DMs out on LinkedIn and sending emails that nobody was listening to. So realized I needed to find a better way of getting in. So I managed to partner with somebody who creates Lego for therapy. There's a thing called Lego Serious Play. And the idea is you have a small number of bricks, you build a Lego model, and it reverts you back to like a childlike state. So it relaxes you. So we created these Lego models and we sent it out into the NHS. We packaged them up with a little QR code that said, WhatsApp me the picture of what you've created, so that we knew people were definitely doing it from an accountability point of view. And I sort of didn't expect anything to happen. I was like, it's a nice thing. It's going to be a nice story on a podcast one day, isn't it? Rather than it being anything useful. But we got hundreds and hundreds of responses. Like, all these people started WhatsApping me. And some of the people who were WhatsApping me were actually key decision makers for the NHS. So 3-4 months later, I'm having conversations over WhatsApp with all these key decision makers from an NHS trust. And it ended up leading to having a £3 million contract put on the table in front of me to supply my resilience training to the NHS. And it's when I started thinking about that afterwards, I was like, actually, what I really enjoy about this is less the resilience training. And I actually really enjoyed the sales element. I enjoyed getting myself in front of that business. I enjoyed getting myself in there when everybody says you can't get into the NHS. So that's when I realized that actually the resilience thing isn't where I want to go. I don't want to be another lockdown wellbeing business. I want to go into the sales side of it.
That's really interesting. And I love the way that you've drawn upon that previous experience and that life as an airline pilot, and almost using the same terminology now into your process. So perhaps you can explain a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so what I've created now is a sales and marketing flight plan, and it's all based on everything I was taught in the cockpit. So it starts off with using the right amount of automation. So I think business owners, when they think of automation, they think a way of removing themselves from the business. It's a way of creating these incredible systems and processes so that they don't have to do those jobs. And actually, if you think about the cockpit and think back to my experience as a pilot, the reason we have an autopilot on an airplane is actually to make the passenger's life better. You don't want to be on an airplane that I'm flying manually if I've been flying it for 10 hours. And it does happen. We're trained to do it. But the chances of it being a little bit more bumpy, they're quite high. So we want to make the passenger's life as comfortable as possible. And that's where autopilot comes in. And I always say to my clients, the reason we use automation in business is for exactly the same reason. We want to make a better experience for our clients, for our customers, for our prospects. And that's where automation comes in. If we use that and we sit that at the center of everything we do, we are way more likely to turn them into a customer further down the line. So that's where the process starts. It starts with that, and we split it down into takeoff, cruise and landing phases. So how can we set up conversations right at the beginning with an expectation of a final destination? How can we support people in the cruise phase of flight, or in the process where we're automating as much as possible and allowing people to come and speak to us? And then finally, how can we use this to really land the sale? There's a saying we use in aviation, which is every takeoff is optional, but every landing is mandatory. And I firmly believe that once you have a client in your pipeline, you need to land it in some way, whether that's a yes or a no. You can't just have them circling around for the rest of their life. And that's our philosophy really with the sales and marketing flight plan.
And I guess most people see WhatsApp as a personal messaging app. When you start to interact with a business, are there some do's and don'ts, as a business who wants to start using WhatsApp to make sure that you continue to build that trust and that relationship through that messaging?
Yeah, great question. For me, it comes down to just being a human. Like, it's all about being a human. I think business relationships are built on human to human. So I think as much as you can bring yourself into the process using things like video, voice notes, as much as everybody says they hate voice notes, they're still a really powerful trust builder in terms of how we make somebody feel and how we make them respond to us. When we can bring those elements into it, it's like we're talking to a real person more than, we're talking to a static business somewhere in the background. I think if you think of email, for example, whenever you receive an email from a business, 99% of the time, it's not the business owner sending you that email. It's something behind the scenes, maybe an admin person that's actually emailing you. Whereas a voice note or a video is come from that person. It builds that trust immediately.
Can you give us a couple of examples then, Paul, of some use cases? How can we integrate WhatsApp into our business?
Yeah, that's a really good question. We're working with a school at the moment, and this is a really powerful example where when somebody downloads a prospectus to view the school, they're interested in finding out more. The first thing that happens is they receive a video message in WhatsApp from the head teacher. I said to the school when I was delivering the training to them, I said, imagine a scenario where the head teacher picks up the phone and speaks to every single person who inquires. We all know that's going to lead to more sales, like more conversations, more conversions all day long. But that head teacher doesn't have the time to do that. There is no way they can possibly do that. But we can replicate that on a platform that allows us to replicate that gets results. And this can be used in any business. Think about any business that you interact with. Imagine you book a flight with Virgin Atlantic and you get a voice message from Richard Branson that's like, thank you so much for booking. By the way, did you know you can upgrade your seats below? All those things, it builds credibility on a level that you never thought you could build credibility. The other side of that, and again, another good case study from the work that we do is, we've just been doing this with Nick James and Expert Empires, is allowing people to come to you and ask questions when they're ready to ask a question. So having a bot on your website or embedding QR codes in everything you do so that when somebody sees your content or they interact with you somewhere online, that there's a direct line to come and find out more, to ask those questions at a time that's convenient for the client rather than a time that's convenient for you. There are so many examples you can use. I could have you here all day giving you examples of ways to use WhatsApp.
Yeah. Well, we've been exploring this and I know you're working with Kevin as well. And our listeners probably are getting the idea here of why it's so effective, but perhaps still not understanding exactly how does it work, right? So there are different platforms out there. Are we talking about literally just picking up the WhatsApp on your phone and as a business owner, we're kind of setting things up? How does it actually work? How do we create the automation?
Yeah, so there's two ways of doing it, really. I always talk to clients about starting off the simplest way possible, and that is picking up your own phone and just messaging somebody. One of the most powerful messages we send to people is a selfie. So let's imagine you've got a potential client who is ghosting you. They're not following up. You're not able to get in touch with them in the follow-up. If you just send them a selfie, and it sounds a bit random, but if you just send them a selfie with no context, they see that image, it's pattern interrupt, it stops them in their tracks, and it immediately puts you in the front of their mind, and they then create the context around that image. And we generally get about a 90% response rate when we send that message out. It is the most ridiculous message you could ever send to somebody, but it's so powerful. So I always say to people, this is a really good starting point if you want to get involved in WhatsApp. Just pick it up, send someone a message, have a conversation. And that's the key. Like, it's about being conversational. Then we want to progress it to the next level, which is where we look at automation. So there was a survey carried out by Harvard Business Review last year, I think it was, that found if you can respond to a lead within 5 minutes of them entering your pipeline, you are 100 times more likely to turn that lead into a client, which is madness. But very few people are actually doing that. And the ones that are doing it are not really doing it in an effective way. So most people will send an email within 5 minutes. But if that email doesn't get opened, you're just shouting into the void. So if we can use automation to WhatsApp somebody within 5 minutes of them submitting an inquiry, the potential there is absolutely endless. We ran a campaign for a client recently where we invited 100 people to a webinar via email and 100 people to a webinar via WhatsApp. Out of the email campaign, 4 people signed up to the webinar. And out of the WhatsApp campaign, 56 people signed up to the webinar. And it purely is down to just that effectiveness of it felt more authentic because it was a bit conversational in the video we sent and it actually reached them. So I think going back to your question, when people think of automation, they think of it being crazy and being really complicated. Sometimes the simpler, the better. Start manually, figure out that it works, figure out what works for your audience, and then start to build the automation in afterwards.
And when we talk about automation, are we now talking about the use of AI, of kind of intelligent messaging? Is that kind of like the next stage when you start getting a little bit more advanced?
Yeah, I think it is. I think you've got to be careful with AI that you don't remove the human element. The power of WhatsApp for me right now is in human to human. We are testing a Q&A basically right now where we feed it all the questions from a website and we use the AI to answer those questions. I think the key with any AI is making sure there's always still a route to a human within there. So when we set up our automations, we'll always say, look, at any point in this, send the word human and we'll connect you to somebody on the human side. You'll get a faster response from AI. You'll get your answers quicker. But if there's something we can't answer, there's a direct line there to get a person to come and answer for you.
Yeah. And you just spoke about webinars, and we do a lot of webinars at WealthBuilders. You talked about the open rate or the opt-in rate there, being massively increased when the invitation was sent through WhatsApp. But webinars tend to have a sort of a before, a during and an after stage. How else can WhatsApp perhaps interact and help with promotion and sales for anyone who's doing webinars?
Yeah, that's a really good one. So webinars are kind of our bread and butter, really. And the sales and marketing flight plan was actually built around the idea of a webinar. So the takeoff phase of our flight plan is that before webinar phase. And we look at 2 areas of it. So how can we invite people to the webinar that have maybe attended before, that have maybe in your community, that are around you? Sending a super personalized invitation, again, that comes with a video. Hey, you've been in my world for a certain amount of time. I'd love to invite you to this training I'm doing. Are you interested in coming? Yes or no? So that it's asking for interaction. We're getting that 2-way conversation from them straight away. but then creating a route for a conversation when they do sign up. So once somebody signs up, again, sending a video back that says, thanks for signing up. I really appreciate it. What do you want to learn? Like, what do you want to get out of this webinar? I always say to clients, whenever you send a WhatsApp message, always end it with a question, because that's where the conversations lie. And it's much more authentic. We're also within that conditioning people to talk to us, because we want them to talk to us when it comes to the end of the webinar and we make an offer. So it's having that line through. The second part of the webinar, which is the bit you said, the during, that's the cruise phase for us. So this is where we create opportunities for people to speak to us when they want to speak to us. So if I use the analogy of being on a flight, let's imagine we're on a transatlantic flight. You're in the cruise phase of that flight. So during that phase, you want to have something to eat. You maybe want to watch a film, might want to have a nap, do some work. The last thing you want is for somebody to keep interrupting you all the time, saying, would you like something to eat? Would you like something to drink? Or the pilot's constantly making announcements, telling you what's going on outside the windows. We don't want it. What we want on the flight is a call bell where we can press a button and someone's going to come to us and answer our questions or give us the thing that we want. So we talk about in the webinar, creating opportunities all the way through it that are like the call bell. So, for example, if you want the slides from this talk, scan this QR code, send me the word slides, and we're going to send them back to you through WhatsApp. We're not going to force that on you, but if you want them, this is how you get them. Similarly, towards the end of the webinar, an opportunity to connect with us through WhatsApp or an opportunity to ask more questions. There are always people that will leave a webinar going, I wish I would have asked that question. I just can't believe I didn't ask it. And then you've lost them. So just creating these inbound opportunities always. And then the third element of the webinar is the landing phase, which is the afterwards, where ultimately we're going to land the sale. We're going to be much more direct. We're going to push them towards the next step, whatever the next step is. And ultimately we're looking for a yes or a no from them. We don't want to leave them in limbo land with a maybe, but because we've done all that hard work of building all the credibility, building the trust, they're more likely to be honest with us on the end and give us a yes or no answer.
Yeah, no, I love that flight path and makes complete sense. And I guess a flight path in business. So we're talking mostly about lead generation here, but are you also seeing the use of WhatsApp once a customer's acquired? So maybe for support and areas like that?
Yeah, customer journey is really important, I think, across the board. We've got a client right now that once people have started working with him, there's a specific process they go through. So he's a tree surgeon. And in order for him to carry out the works, they have to get architectural plans in and see where boundaries are and all those kind of things. And we use WhatsApp to keep people informed every single stage of that process. So when somebody originally onboards, they will send through a document through WhatsApp that says, these are the things we need from you. Just reply from us in WhatsApp and we'll send it. Then they'll get another message to say, thanks, this has all been submitted. Then one to say it's gone to the architects, one to say the architects have replied, one then to say, right, we're now ready to schedule in your visit. So again, it's just think about all the ways we would use email or all the ways we would use the phone. You can just double up in so many more ways by using WhatsApp and by making the most influential person in your business speak to them without having to take up any of their time. It's a game changer when you really start deploying it.
Yeah. And I'm sure most people listening, like myself, we're interacting with other businesses through their WhatsApp, but it's now about putting yourself in that shoe and thinking, okay, how can I integrate this into my own business? And as you say, it's really easy just to take that first step, isn't it? And just test it and see what the results are for yourself. But are there any common mistakes that we haven't addressed that you see business owners making?
Yeah, I mean, the most common mistake I see is people trying to be someone that they're not. So they try to go into like polished copywriter mode, and that's not needed. Like, if you send somebody a WhatsApp video or a WhatsApp voice note, of course they need to be able to hear what you're saying to them, but it doesn't need to be polished. If there's background noise, that's perfect. It adds credibility. There's a bit of a running joke with my community where I always say to them, I send my voice notes when I'm making coffee. So I'm like, there's 3 or 4 points during the day where I'll make myself a coffee, and that's when I voice note people. And it's become this bit of a joke now where if I voice note somebody and they can't hear the kettle in the background, they're going, hang on a minute, what's going on? Has something been cancelled? Are you okay? Do we need to send help? Because they're just so used to me using this as like, this is the expectation that's been set now. You'll hear this in the background. Similarly, if you go out for a walk and you're voice noting people, being able to hear the birds in the background or a dog running across the field or something like that, it humanizes you. It adds to the personality. So yeah, don't be too polished with it.
You've given us some great value already, Paul, but I know that you've actually put together a number of your own campaigns into a playbook, and you're kindly offering that for our listeners today. So tell us a bit more about what they will learn from that.
Yeah, so my WhatsApp playbook it's everything I've ever created, really. So whenever I start mapping out a campaign for a client, and these are high ticket clients that invest significant amounts to come and work with me, I will map out their campaign on paper. It's like the old school pilot in me that everything goes back to pen and paper. And I have a notebook that's just got all of my best performing campaigns in it. So at the beginning of this year, I scanned them all into the computer and I created a playbook where you can get access to all of these campaigns, exactly how they work, what they look like, why they work, how you deploy them yourself, how you can do it manually and how you can do it automated, with obviously some flair in there of using WhatsApp. So there's QR codes dotted through it so that you can scan them and it'll take you to extra videos and extra content, and obviously an incredible WhatsApp follow-up off the back of it. So yeah, I've packaged that together with a webinar as well. So I created a webinar that takes you through the process, through the flight plan and how you can deploy it. So yeah, it's available at clientfunnels.co.uk/wealth.
Excellent. I'll pop the link. Thank you for sharing that. And there's no cost, of course, to downloading that playbook. So definitely click that link. And anyone listening now who wants to maybe find out more about you and how to work with you, Paul, that would be the best place to go, right? Download the playbook.
Yeah, absolutely. And that will put you into my WhatsApp as well. And then there's an opportunity to have a conversation.
Yeah, great. And Paul, I know you're speaking on stages, podcasts, you're really getting your name out there, building your own personal brand now. Any final words for our listeners around the benefits of messaging, of WhatsApp, or any just kind of business tips that you'd like to share?
Yeah, that's a good one. So rather than giving you a tip, I'm going to give you all a challenge. And my challenge to you is to go and find 10 people in the next 10 minutes that you can send a WhatsApp to. Doesn't have to be a selfie, doesn't have to be a voice note, doesn't have to be a video, but just go and WhatsApp 10 people and just watch the magic unfold in front of you.
Paul, okay, well, we'll take that challenge. And thanks so much for sharing today. I look forward to catching up with you again soon.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Really enjoyed that one, Kevin. And I love marketing. I do a fair bit for Wealth Builders. As you said at the beginning, we're now integrating some of these strategies that Paul has just shared into our own business, and we're seeing some great results. So if you're listening now and take up Paul on his challenge there, just send those 10 WhatsApps. It's amazing. I actually did it myself, and a few people who perhaps I hadn't heard from a while. And yeah, you get the response.
Yeah, and the immediacy of it as well. So increasingly, I'm using now the WhatsApp to do it rather than text. And you do get a faster response. You can do your voice note, you can do a video note. And I think definitely one of the lessons I picked up from Paul, which is, when I finish speaking an event and people have captured, they've allowed us to capture their details on WhatsApp. And if they want to book, they just WhatsApp book and the books will be sent automatically. And straight away after the video, after the presentation, we can do a short video, just again bring that personal touch to something rather than leave it to the old stagecoach, the old fashioned and now increasingly unpopular way to get a message across, which is email. And I think what we're noticing about technology, Chris, I don't know if you notice it in the same way as I do, is a lot older, but every time a new bit of technology comes in, something follows pretty quickly afterwards to babysit it. To minimize disruption, to minimize overwhelm. We had the phone, and then we had the answer phone. Then we have a fax, and then that's all gone now. And then we had email, and then you get what do you get there? Spam and spam controls, and so on and so forth. So the babysitting of the technology always happens, but WhatsApp is still so fresh, isn't it? And I love the immediacy of it, and I'm beginning to use it a lot more. since meeting with Paul. Always used it in my family. Didn't really use it in business, but now increasingly I can see the value of it, and it would commend the thought of anybody to begin to embrace that technology and bring it into their business.
Yeah, and like anything, just taking the first step and using the standard WhatsApp that we probably all have on our phones. But WhatsApp now, as a company owned by Meta, now have WhatsApp for Business, slightly more advanced, but comes with it more business tools, more automation. But Paul did point out the use of automation is to create a better customer experience. And I think we've all been on the end of AI and automation recently, Kevin, where it's very obvious and it doesn't feel good when you know it's so robotic.
Yeah, we can see that, and I hate it when I get what's obviously AI generated, just, landing in my LinkedIn profile or on my Facebook or whatever it would be. And I'm seeing that the authenticity of a personal message doesn't have to be sharp, doesn't have to be honed, doesn't have to be on brand necessarily, as long as you are representing the values of your brand, which for us is always sharing with intention, giving as much away as we can, giving people an action they can take for themselves so that they can take a positive action as a result of listening to what we have to say. Wherever possible, though, let people know that if they work with us, they'll get a much better result, or a faster result, or a bigger result. So if we keep that in mind, as we always do, give something for free, give something for someone they could take on their own, but always offer what we can do to speed up and accelerate them on the journey to where they're headed in, and obviously in our case, in a wealth side. But it could be any business, couldn't it, really? It doesn't have to be a wealth building business. I think if you keep that in mind, it might serve you well.
Yeah, and we work with 3 key types of people at Wealth Builders: the successful employees, the business owners, and property professionals. And I think there's something for everyone in today's episode where you can apply this. But what an inspiration Paul is, who was a pilot not that many years ago. COVID obviously put pay to that. And he's now speaking on stages in front of hundreds of people, building his own IP, building his own business. I think just a real inspiration to anyone listening now who perhaps is stuck in a job thinking, well, this is all I've done. How could I do anything else? Well, there you go.
A very good point, Chris. And he does it so naturally as well. And you've enjoyed his company, and looking forward to working with Paul more, and would encourage anybody to download, the freebie opportunity will be in the show notes, and see what you can make of it and bring the leverage of some of these tools. Because if we go back to the concept of leverage, Chris, which is all wealth is created by the use of leverage, it really comes in business from people or technology. So you can get financial leverage, of course, but in business, it's almost always more people doing more things, wherever you get that from, whether it's direct employees, VAs, or whatever, and the use of technology, and increasingly harnessing technology to help you do a better job. And we're definitely going to be embracing that technology, not just AI, but also, just how to use WhatsApp by intention. So looking forward to doing that, and looking forward to seeing Paul doing even bigger and better things as he flies further away than he was when he was flying as a commercial pilot.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, don't forget, hit the share button, send it to a friend. And Kevin, you and I will be back same time, same place next week.
We will. Don't forget to send me a WhatsApp about that. Look forward to that. And until then, my friends, see ya.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Don't forget that we are constantly updating our resources inside the Wealth Builders membership site to help you create, build, and protect your wealth. Head over to wealthbuilders.co.uk/membership right now for free access. That's wealthbuilders.co.uk/membership.